Hi, and welcome to the lecture for chapter number 8, Practical Tips for Leading Small Groups. Throughout the semester, we've gotten oriented to some of the basic concepts of group communication, small group communication. We've been through many theoretical models. Now we're heading into a completely different route, and we're going to land here throughout the rest of the semester. And these are the practical tips for encountering some of the obstacles that face groups. So today we're going to look at practical tips for leading small groups, building upon our leadership chapter. We're going to then look at conflict in later chapters and how to deal with some of the things that just emerge organically, often in groups. So we know that part of leading groups involves careful planning. As leaders, if you've assumed a leadership role, know that your job is to be the constant planner. The creation, the vision, the thought process, those throughput variables, those all depend upon your ability to construct and implement a plan. I do apologize in advance because today's lecture is a little bit bullet point heavy. Because when it comes to this last section of the textbook, there's no real fun way to talk about these things. But these things are so important for the administrative success of the group. In order for tasks to truly be accomplished how they're supposed to be accomplished, you must be able to implement a plan and implement leadership in a practical way. And these are the tips for doing just that. There are several different elements of what it means to be a leader. We're going to specifically look at what it means to be an administrative leader. As a leader, you're going to have some administrative duties. These duties include assembling the group, selecting the group members carefully, developing a group charter, which you've already done this semester. You've already developed the purpose of the group. But don't take this for granted. As you go out into your professional life, remember to also always develop a group statement of purpose. This can help keep you on track and create and foster a group identity. And make sure members commit to the group's goals. It's almost like dodgeball in middle school. You pick the teams because you see something in them, but then it's not just picking the teams. You got to ensure that those players play their heart out. As you plan, you also have to plan for your group. You got to plan for the group's success. You got to always define the purpose of each meeting. You've got to establish starting and ending times for a meeting. If you agree to get together with your group, don't just say, let's meet at 2. Say, let's meet from 2 to 4:30. That way you have a designated and accountable time frame to accomplish your tasks within. If special resource people are needed, advise and prepare them. If you need to get in contact with our community partners, that's fine. If they need to show up at a meeting, in most cases that's fine. Hopefully you don't have to do that, but if you do, advise and prepare what their role will be. Think through all the tools that you may need for a meeting. If you want to give an overview of the PowerPoint that your group's going to do or give in a presentation, make sure you booked a room that has PowerPoint capabilities. That's just one example, but any resources or tools you need, make sure that you have them. Make all necessary physical arrangements. Book a room. Don't just show up and expect to meet somewhere. You can sometimes take chances. Meet at a Starbucks, sure, but if you're going to meet on campus, make sure you book a room. Have all appropriate technology and make sure it works. Again, if you're going to run over a PowerPoint presentation that you've created, make sure that you've got it in the bag, that you've got it with you, and you've got it working on your end. Prepare a procedure for evaluating the meeting. It's always a good idea at the end of the meeting to ask, did we accomplish everything we said we were going to accomplish? Get some group feedback. This makes it seem so formal. You don't need to have a formal procedure for evaluating a meeting, but make sure you do get feedback on that. And then notify members of the purpose or agenda, necessary preparations, and time and place of a meeting. This hits back to main point 1 here, but make sure ahead of the curve you're being administratively responsible. Send out an agenda. Do any necessary preparation you need. Make sure you give the time and place of the meeting and have all details wrapped up. Chapter 8 spends a good portion talking about the importance of written communication from a leadership perspective. I've included links here on this slide, and I'm also going to include them in our Canvas module as well. I want you to review these. I can assure you that they will, yes, again, manifest in this course, perhaps on a test or an exam. But these are great resources for taking meeting notes and constructing an agenda. Recently, we did a round of hiring here, and we were going to hire somebody for an administrative support position until that person said, yeah, I just don't know that I know how to take notes. I'm going to have to learn that. Well, that's exactly what I need you to do. I'm not sure I want to hire you if you don't know how to take notes. This is a good skill set to have. However, it builds on what's in the textbook, but needs to be much more robust. So I've included these links. Please visit them. That is part of this chapter and should be a part of your study guide as well. But what this chapter really does is it outlines how to conduct a meeting through several different steps, from the opening to the closing and beyond, actually. So let's walk through these. We've got 10 steps. So let's talk about conducting a meeting, step 1. In your opening remarks, when you first begin the meeting, number 1, make sure all members and guests know each other. Do introductions, even if you think that it's obvious or everybody knows each other. Second, review the group charter. And in many cases, this can be a broken down version of the charter. It could be just the agenda, including intended outcomes for today's meeting. See that any special roles are established. If somebody in the group needs to speak, make sure that they know that. If you're going to ask somebody to report later on in the meeting about their progress, make sure that that's established. Distribute any handouts. In class settings, I often discourage handouts. Why? Because if you hand out a handout, your audience's eyes are going to be on that handout when you want them to be on you. Establish any initial ground rules. So if the whole goal of today is to refrain from judging anybody's ideas because we're trying to get to the bottom of a solution, let that be known. If the whole goal is to present information and you don't want a lot of collaboration or conversation, make that known. Then suggest procedures to follow. Say, I suggest we withhold any judgment of ideas until the very end. Focus initial discussion on the first substantive agenda item. So get the biggest tasks out of the way first, because in meetings, especially meetings between cohesive group members, we tend to converse a lot, and so time gets away from us. So tackle the biggest tasks first. Step 2, after you've done those opening remarks, you then move into the discussion portion. So let's talk about conducting effective meetings in terms of discussion. Number 1, keep all discussion goal-oriented. Remember, as we've noted throughout the semester, small group communication involves both task and interpersonal functions. However, try to always keep in mind the task functions of any group. Keep your goal in mind. That's important and will help rein in some of that external conversation that may not be immediately valuable. Second, learn the value of parking topics in a parking lot. So we've done this in many administrative meetings I'm a part of, where we say, I think this is important, but let's park it for now. When you park your car, you never leave it there permanently in a parking lot. You come back and pick it up later, right? You take your keys with you, do what you need to do, and come back and pick it up later. That's what you can do in a meeting. Park off-topic items or topics that don't need to be discussed immediately in a parking lot and pick them back up later. Then use summaries to help make clear transitions. You say, okay, so I'm hearing that we're all a little dissatisfied with how this program unfolded. Let's move forward and talk about what we can do to remedy this situation before we move into it next summer. Then help the group manage its time. This is important for leaders. You've got to say, look guys, it's 2:15, we've only got 30 minutes left. We've got to get through 4 agenda items. Let's move quickly. And then bring all discussion to a definitive close. If somebody's still talking or doesn't feel that you've reached a conclusion, don't move on. Schedule another meeting if you have to. Make sure everybody feels supported and validated. Step 3, how do you ensure equitable participation? How do you ensure that everybody does feel like a valuable member of the group? Well, first, address comments and questions to the entire group. Don't just say, hey, dude, how do you feel? Hey, Dean Rose, how do you feel? No, address it to the entire group. Say, all right, guys, what do you think? Second, make sure all members have an opportunity to speak. Now, when feasible, try to seat talkative members where you can seem to overlook them naturally. So if you have people that tend to dominate conversation, sit them closer to you so that as you're looking to the group, they fall outside of your eye gates and they don't think that you're trying to lead them into the conversation. And if somebody who talks along has finished one point, cut in with a tactful comment, such as, how do the rest of you feel about that? That helps include everybody. Suggest a group role for overtalkers, that each person make one point only and then give the floor to others. That way one person doesn't dominate the conversation. If you have an overtalker in private, try to tactfully tell them that they've been very helpful and they're very articulate, but to maybe rein it in just a bit because others might feel intimidated about participating. You can also have an observer keep track of how many comments a person gives or how long each comment is and try to rein that in a little bit more. And then as a last resort, you can ask the person to just stop talking. Say, hey, your ideas are great, but you're giving a lot. Let's let other people chime in as well. Those are some practical strategies for understanding how to balance the conversation. When people participate, listen with real interest, especially to infrequent speakers. If somebody who doesn't talk often takes the initiative, stands up, and speaks, validate that. Don't comment after each member's remark, because that shows that you're being an overtalker, or see yourself in a role of dominance and authority. The best leaders facilitate, chime in when necessary, but let others kind of ride out the conversation. Bounce requests for opinion on big issues. Even if it seems like you're all on the same page, say, okay, does anybody disagree? I mean, is there something we're missing here? Ask for opinions. And then always try to remain neutral during arguments. Sometimes it can be difficult, especially if your group is getting heated. But try to just remain a facilitator and take yourself out. Try to take your emotions out of the situation. Step 4. The best meetings involve creativity, because creativity helps us arrive at different solutions that we may not immediately come to. So how do we promote creativity? Well, number one, a great strategy is to defer evaluation and ask group members to do the same. Say, all right, you know what? We're going to suspend all judgment. Any ideas, even if they seem ridiculous, are welcomed. Try brainstorming. Try mind mapping. Try regularly engaging in creativity-enhancing techniques. Then encourage the group to search for more alternatives. Even if you found an alternative you like, say, all right, I'm not satisfied until we come up with 3 more. Give me 3 more ideas that we can consider. They may be ridiculous, but sometimes the ridiculous can actually help us. And then be alert to suggestions that open up new areas of thinking. Some of the best meetings I've been a part of are ones where the leader goes, oh, wow, I hadn't thought of that. Oh, okay, now that makes me think about X, Y, and Z. That's not a detriment to the group. That's for the betterment of the group. So never stifle creativity. Never dismiss something as ridiculous. Try to suspend all judgment. Also, we want to promote critical thinking. Creativity in and of itself isn't sufficient. You've also got to think critically about how will this be able to be implemented. So here are some strategies to promote critical thinking. First, if the group gets solution-minded too quickly, suggest more analysis. If they just want to get in there and get to the solution, say, okay, are we sure that we really understand the scope of the problem? Help me explain. Let's all explain together. How do you see this problem? How do you understand it? Encourage members to evaluate information. Encourage members to be super critical. Don't take anything for granted. Don't just accept something as fact. Poke holes in it. Ask them to evaluate information. Make sure all group members understand and accept all standards, criteria, and assumptions used in making judgment. Basically, this just means make sure everybody's on the same page and using the same problem-solving skill sets. And then test all proposed solutions thoroughly before accepting them as final group decisions. And finally, help prevent groupthink. Your goal is to arrive at a mutually agreed upon solution, but don't get there too quickly. If you get there too quickly, it likely means that somebody is stifling their own personal thoughts and feelings in favor of just arriving at that final outcome. That is not effective. Step 6. Not only do you want to accomplish a task, you want to promote continuous improvement, and there are a few strategies you can use to do that. First, always determine how a meeting could be improved. One of the things I do after every meeting I lead is I go back to my office and I immediately type up the notes because I want them to be fresh on my memory, and you saw that in the written communication slide on slide 5. But I also like to think about what we can do next time to avoid any problems we have. If somebody dominated the conversation, I think, ugh, what could I have done to kind of stifle that? Or if I said something stupid, I think, okay, I cannot do that again. Be always thinking about the quality of meetings and how they can be improved. Even if they go well, think about how they can go even better next time. And then 2, determine the most important changes to be made at the next meeting and adjust your behavior accordingly. This seems to indicate that you only do this when a meeting goes poorly, but that's really not the case. You want to do this even when a meeting goes Well, you want to do this to promote continuous improvement. Step 7. Beyond just promoting continuous improvement in pursuit of a task, you want to promote group development. You want to make sure the group is continuously moving forward as well, and the individuals in that group are feeling validated and moving forward in a professional way. You should encourage members to assess the group's processes and make suggestions. So encourage members to kind of step outside of that group as well. Think about the group process and then offer suggestions for how it can improve. Then model the behaviors that you want to see others adopt. If you want people to not be excessive windbags, don't be an excessive windbag in a meeting. If you want people to be a little bit more supportive and respectful to each other, instead of calling it out, first model it. And then give others practice at performing needed group duties. So bring everybody in and ask them to do something that's necessary to the group. That's a validating measure. Step 6, you want to promote trust in a group. How do you do that? Well, you establish norms that build trust. Norms are a way to show the group that they have a unique group identity. And when people participate in norms and they're regarded for it, it shows that they're part of that group. And even just feeling like you're a part of the group can also demonstrate some trust, or it can exhibit a feeling of trust. Second, confront trust violators and other problem members. If you catch group members being cliquish, being dishonest, being gossipy, confront it. That's one of the hardest aspects of leadership because those problems naturally emerge. But it's your goal and it's your job to make sure that you call it out and address it. Encourage members to understand and embrace diversity. Again, I told you it's going to be woven throughout almost every single chapter in this course. You want every single member of this course to embrace diversity. To not be scared of it, to not run from it, but to really welcome it with open arms. And then be a principles leader, or a leader driven by principle. Be clear. Be consistent. Step 9, constantly promote collaborative teamwork. Again, plan for some group fun. We've talked about the interpersonal dimensions of group work. Make sure that you're pulling on the benefits of that. Plan time to just spend time as a group apart from the task. Promote the group as a whole. Say, guys, you know what? We are awesome. This is the best group ever. I do that a lot in meetings, and I find that it's a really validating measure. Then share all rewards with the group. If somebody, a senior official, says, hey, I noticed the hard work you're doing, at the next meeting, mention that. Say, hey, the senior official came and told me that they saw all the great work we were doing, and they very much appreciate all that we've done. Turn that I comment that you received into a we comment. Then get group input and buy-in about promoting teamwork. Say, all right, guys, what do you think we can do to make this team even better, more efficient? Get group input. That's going to get buy-in. Confront all members whose behavior is hurting the team, like we noted on the last slide. Call it out. Do it in a respectful and tactful way. Don't do it in front of everybody unless that seems appropriate. But confront members whose behavior hurts the team as a whole. Keep all arguments focused on facts and issues, not personality. Arguments do happen, and actually arguments are not something you should shy away from. They can help prevent groupthink. However, make sure they're arguments that are focused on accomplishing the task and not vindictive personality-based arguments. And then finally, look for compromise, but avoid compromise if possible. Promote collaboration. Try to find a mutually agreeable solution that doesn't involve somebody having to give up something that they wanted to see. And then step 10 is more of a philosophical consideration, but it's be ethical. Leaders have an immense responsibility to be ethical. So don't intentionally send deceptive or harmful messages. Place concern for others above concern for your own personal gain as a leader. Establish clear policies that all group members are expected to follow, and then stick to those policies yourself. Respect the opinions and attitudes of members, even if they diverge from your own. Stand behind members when they carry out policies and actions that are approved by the group. Validate that publicly, and then treat members consistently and without bias. I recognize that this information isn't fun. There's no TV shows or movies used, but these are crucial considerations for all leaders and all group members to consider. because it's the practical elements of this course that you're going to carry out into your own professional lives. So take active notes. Please be sure you've also visited the links for written communication. Those are part of this chapter as well. As always, please remember to complete your study guide in a timely fashion and submit. And as always, if you have questions, let me know. I look forward to putting some of these practical principles into practice in our class sessions. Until that time, thanks for watching.